Switching up the way things usually are isn't always for the best. Hitman 2 on the PlayStation 2 proved to be my first experience with the franchise that would spawn a hefty helping of sequels ranging from games set to improve upon what came before it, to grandiose reboots or adjustments to make each game more accessible without foregoing the franchise's greatest strength: kill targets in almost any way the player sees fit. In an effort to adapt to gaming's changing consumer market, IO Interactive teamed with Square Enix to release 5 episodes month by month in 2016, before the complete Hitman package came together. A sequel would follow 2 years later without the episodic release schedule, but a gameplay style rooted in what came before it while testing the waters with memorable, though not fully realized multiplayer modes. What is now a narrative trilogy, Hitman 3 has arrived with the promise of bigger environments, better ways to complete a job, and the conclusion of 47's story, all things I was excited to see pan out in this potentially ultimate Hitman experience. Unlike the old Hitman games where the simple premise of eliminate the target and move on to the next stage was the norm, the most recent versions of Hitman, including this offering, feature so much the player can take part in to make each mission as memorable as possible, mostly thanks to challenges. Each of the 6 maps available have a set of challenges that can be completed via certain situations, including story missions. Scenarios specific to each map, usually featuring protagonist Agent 47 dressing up as someone like a renowned detective, looking to figure out who murdered a member of a very wealthy family. These challenges provide massive replayability and will take completionists dozens of hours to finish. There are also non-narrative modes, including the returning sniper assassin, escalation, and contracts. To top it off, owners of Hitman 2016 and Hitman 2 have the ability to download all the maps from the previous entries, boosted by the implementations from its sequel. After completing the main story maps and playing all the modes in 12 hours or so, there's still a lot of challenges left to discover, including those from the previous Hitman, that will definitely keep me coming back for a long time. Like its most recent predecessor, Hitman 3 is a hefty package from the onset, featuring 6 maps connected to a campaign that is not as grandiose as expected, considering the promotion that this is Agent 47's last go-round. Though the story is definitely a lot more grounded and understandable as to why each mission is happening compared to almost any Hitman game before it. The game's real story is usually connected to how well the player handles being as stealthy as possible, and then adapting to a situation gone wrong, especially when someone sees 47 pulling off a kill and his disguise is compromised, meaning the player must either escape the area without dying and or disable someone with the intent of pressing on with a new plan under a different identity. Agent 47 has a slew of weapons he can bring with him, including a silenced pistol and his infamous fiber wire, but utilizing items found in the world is usually the best way to go, including poisoning a ventilation system while posing as a doctor. Agent 47 gunning his way through an area is always an option, but the overall movement and gunplay doesn't make it the most useful or satisfying method. Melee combat boils down to a quick time event that too feels unfulfilling. There are some new gameplay implementations like a decoding camera for hacking certain windows or security systems, and hidden paths that stay unlocked after completing a stage. The map selection in Hitman 3 is diverse and large, with grand hotels, neon-soaked streets leading to a heavily guarded security system, and even a vineyard where 47 can pluck the luscious grapes. Moving around a map will provide story missions, which are specifically made for each map, and is usually a more detailed way to complete an assassination, while the game assists the player with waypoints. Story missions are a nice way to help players who don't want to be overwhelmed by all the options of completing a task. The picture-in-picture updates, such as an unconscious body being found, also helps keep a player on their toes, while helping them learn from their mistakes when going about replaying the stage. Added to the replayability of Hitman 3 is the returning difficulty levels. with professional difficulty being akin to normal in relation to other games, while 3's master setting removes the restart function from missions, while upping the AI's awareness and features no guidance system. Most of the multiplayer options from Hitman 2 are sadly gone in this iteration. Outside of the returning contracts mode where players can create their own missions and upload them for players to complete, nothing allows for players to come together in the Hitman universe like Ghost Mode did in Hitman 2. Sniper Assassin mode returns, but only in its single-player form, a mode featuring a slew of targets to gun down from afar without alerting anyone of the assassin's presence. Hitman 3 also has the same technical issues its predecessors did. Sometimes enemies can be incredibly stupid or unusually hostile. While the game's frame rate and overall stability in regards to crashes and glitches are commendable, unexpected problems will arise from time to time, such as one mission where the NPC needed to progress the scenario got stuck in his chair and wouldn't move until 47 threw a distraction item. Arguably the game's biggest flaw is the necessity for online connectivity. 3's leveling system that unlocks map-specific items and stash locations upon completing a section only works when the player is online. Being always online also means that if the game is having server issues or the player loses internet connection, it'll potentially boot the player back to the main menu if they can't regain a connection. Another issue is the Hitman package offered isn't as complete as expected. There are multiple versions of the Hitman games in this trilogy, and depending on what versions of Hitman 2016, Hitman 2, and Hitman 3 someone owns, the player can't get the full experience of everything all those games provide without purchasing, say, the deluxe edition of Hitman 3 or the Game of the Year version of the 2016 reboot. Even with the same flaws that hindered its previous iterations being noticeable here, the strengths of Hitman 3 outweigh the weaknesses, including improving on the story and presenting some impressive maps that are made for various replays. While this version of Hitman and its direct predecessors have some obvious limitations compared to the earlier games in the franchise, very few are as accessible or enjoyable as Hitman 3. The highly diverse maps, copious amount of options to complete a task both during the campaign or otherwise, and all the features from the previous games for owners of Hitman and Hitman 2 makes this one of the most complete Hitman experiences ever. For fans of the IO Interactive Hitman games from this past gen, this is a no-brainer and a worthy purchase. Those who love stealth games built on improvisation will enjoy this as well, and players that didn't care for the direction the developers took the gameplay won't find this one changing their mind. Hitman 3 ends this trilogy on a high note if there ever was one, like Agent 47 putting down 2 targets with a single bullet.
All your half-assed surveillance.
Both targets in one go. You are good. My turn. Just give me a second, and I'm in. You can now access the core 47.